Oh, yep. Oh, we live?
Are we live?
We're live.
We're live?
Hey, everyone.
Hi everyone.
This is working.
Yeah,
Good. This is good.
This is good. This is how it should be.
Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Zoe from the Scratch team. I help make learning resources here.
Cool. My name is Eric, also known as Speak Visually on Scratch, and I also help with learning resources. And happy to do this webinar. We're going to talk about Hour of Code. So welcome to educators who are about to be doing Hour of Code coming up here in like 2 weeks.
Yeah, a week.
It's a week. It's a week away.
A week from today or something.
Yeah. So what can the educators today look forward to learning about?
We are going to start by talking a bit about the 3 new tutorials we have for Hour of Code this year on Scratch, and then we are going to open it up to you all for questions.
Yeah, and sort of share about what people are doing for their Hour of Codes as well.
Yeah, do a bit of sharing.
So you might notice a fancy graphic at the bottom. So a really important link is this link right here. So throughout the webinar, there's going to be a bunch of important links that you might want to bookmark or save for later. Also, you can kind of follow along because that is going to be kind of an outline of what it is we'll talk about today in the webinar. So it's bit.ly/scratch-hoc-web. So for all the educators out there, this is kind of like your go-to, the holy grail of Google Docs for you. So check that out, follow along as we talk about all the things.
So if we say a link, you don't have to remember it, it's there.
And then hi everyone in the chat. We invite you to ask Hour of Code questions.
Yes.
Just throughout, we'll probably answer most of the questions at the latter half of the hour.
Super excited to see people from Egypt, Brazil, Canada, just all over. Welcome everybody.
Cool. So let's dig in. So we have a graphic here.
Oh yes.
The old-fashioned kind. What is Hour of Code? Hour of Code started, I think, in 2013 through initiativecode.org, and the idea was to sort of introduce kids to sort of an introductory 1-hour session with coding. And obviously over the years it's gotten bigger and bigger, and so now you can kind of host an Hour of Code event using code.org or using Scratch or using a variety of other programming languages. And we today are going to share with you some of the new activities we have for Scratch.
Yeah. So I think we want to talk just a little bit about the philosophy and the things we think about when we're making resources.
Yeah.
We try to make resources that are as generative as possible. So that things that will spark kids going in learners going in as many different directions as possible. Where people can really add their own ideas, make them their own. We really like making things that are kind of thematic, so it'll have some kind of a theme, but that it can be sort of based on interests. So maybe if a kid likes storytelling or a learner likes storytelling or animations or something. Yeah,
so very, very generative. Yeah. So really bringing your own ideas and sort of around themes, so thematic, so stories, games, animations, you name it. Yeah. So, and that's, I think, important context because for Hour of Code, what you can sort of expect sort of your session to look like is to have a lot of sort of tinkering and exploring with these themes, and hopefully at the end of your session, your activity, that all the projects will look different and you kind of have a sense of sort of, again, that expression that comes with coding. And so I think with these activities, you'll find there's a lot of ways in which kids can really make these their own. Yeah.
So I guess what Scratch resources can one use for? Oh wait, there was a graphic for that section and I forgot to hold it up.
Well, there was one more thing we wanted to talk to about the philosophy and resources.
Good, then I have a reason for this.
Well, today when we're sharing with you these activities, they're also sort of in the structure that we'll talk more about, which is the imagine, create, share structure. I got to imagine, create, share, which is at the beginning, spending some time to imagine, brainstorm around the theme, and then you create, so spending the bulk of the time creating, and then sharing at the end. And so as we present these resources, be thinking of that in your mind. Yeah. So without further ado, drum roll.
What Scratch resources do we have for Hour of Code?
That's a good question. So we have 3 new resources, and maybe I can actually, if you go to the homepage of Scratch as of today, so watch this fancy graphic that's about to happen. So as of today, when you visit the Scratch website and you're not logged in, you can see the 3 new Hour of Code activities we have. So we promised, Zoe and I promised in the next hour to go through each of these activities. Yes. But we thought it would be nice to, first, we want to just kind of dive into one of these activities to show you how it is you might run it in your classroom.
Yeah.
Okay, so should we go to the Scratch editor?
Yeah, let's do it.
We're also mindful that there maybe are people here who haven't used Scratch too much, so I think we want to just start out by saying we want to make sure this explanation is kind of giving you the if you've never touched the website before. So if you've never touched Scratch before, if you go and click the Create button, that'll take you into the Scratch editor.
Let you make a new project.
Let you make a new project. And then you'll see front and center here, this is the tutorials window. Mm-hmm. So right now, when you're not logged in, you'll see a getting started video and a getting started tutorial. Yep. This is great just to sort of get your feet wet. So let's actually minimize that for now. And then in the top left.
Will you hit plus a few times?
Yeah.
On the,
I can do that.
Yeah.
I don't have to use my fingers for that.
Whoa, that was
so you'll see a tutorials button. So Zoe and I are going to click that. And then you will see this is a list of all the activities that you have.
Yep, our tutorials library.
Yes, as it were. Okay, so let's click.
Let's start with Imagine a World.
Okay. Cool.
And will you hit the plus down at the bottom so we can make the code pretty big? That would be good.
So later on you'll see while we're clicking that plus button. But let's talk a bit about this. Let's talk about what it is we're looking at right now.
Yeah. So right here, all our tutorials will start with a video that's sort of there for letting people imagine, sort of generate ideas. So this one, the theme of this tutorial is Imagine a World, and it's imagining a world where anything is possible. So the video sort of gives some wacky scenarios and cool different types of ideas of worlds you could imagine, and just to sort of give learners ideas. And then if you click the green arrow that's to the right of the video, just right there, then it's the video is followed by a bunch of images that sort of step by step have simple blocks of Scratch code you can put together to get your project going on this theme. Yeah,
and so I think we were talking about the Imagine section, so the first half to Imagine, and I think that video that you saw gives you a good sense, is very inspirational on what it is you can create. You can have a globe that flies, a zebra that's playing the saxophone, whatever it is you want. And then to sort of get into the coding here with the different steps. Should we kind of just create some really quick?
Let's follow this step.
So just to give you a sense of, I'm going to try to zoom out and make sure this works. Let's see if I zoom out. Okay, great.
Oh, nice.
So for instance, when we're developing a tutorial, want to make sure that we have a really low floor, easy sort of get started. So what you have here in the first couple of steps of this tutorial is essentially just pulling out a very simple event block, really fundamental to Scratch, is the when green flag is clicked. That's something that I think you really want learners, your students, to sort of understand of this is a triggering event here. Yep. And then something that's super, super generative. What is more generative than say blocks? Yeah. So you can add whatever you want. And that's another thing too with these tutorials is it's sort of self-directed, and there should be invitations for you to sort of add whatever it is you want. And so you'll see that here with the next step, which is choose any backdrop. So automatically with choose any backdrop, you have a huge variety. So you're already sort of introducing that sort of customization, and so maybe we'll pick Colorful City.
Yeah, I think we put that step so early in this tutorial because we wanted to let people really imagine their world right away. What of these backdrops feels like a world I want.
So we just picked the kind of Colorful City. Zoe, what sprite should we choose?
Oh man, let's go into there. The bananas are pretty great.
Okay, great. So all right, so. And this kind of gets that. It's it can be wacky, it can be fun. And so we can now kind of go through the rest of the tutorial, and we can see here there's going to be a number of different sort of code block stacks that kind of give you really powerful, simple concepts. So for this one, this is using a key to trigger the changing of a position, super easy stack. You'll see choosing another sprite, move right and left with arrow keys. I mean, this is maybe this is one of the most popular things in Scratch.
Yeah, it's one of our most viewed tutorials.
Yeah, so
go behind the curtain a little bit,
Exactly, yeah. So already it's imagine a world where bananas could move back and forth. Let's do that really quick.
Yeah.
So again,
I would like to be in that world.
Yeah, so we can have it move to the right. Let's go ahead and duplicate the stack. Go left.
Now do a negative number or a minus sign.
Minus sign. So there you have it. We already have the walking banana in the street. And so the idea is as you progress through this tutorial, you're introduced to, I think, like the most basic but most powerful concepts in Scratch, or some of the most powerful concepts in Scratch. And so I cannot say enough about how this tutorial, I think, is great for folks that are just getting started. And if you're thinking about what to introduce, I think this has a lot.
Yeah, and I think this one, we really tried to design this one to be like beginner friendly and really like welcoming as like blocks that are pretty easy to snap together and they won't go wrong.
Yeah. I mean, this is one of my new favorite tutorials that we have. And I'm not just saying that. I mean, it's great. It's great. So let's come back. And what else do we want to talk about this?
That was this.
That was Imagine World. I think we could also talk a bit about this tutorial, because as wonderful as bananas walking through the streets are, you also could think about sort of blending this into maybe a lesson that you're doing, maybe about like social justice or climate change or something that meaningful.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of ways to take the idea, imagine a world. It could be just openly imagine whatever world, whatever wacky things you want. It could also be imagine a world where people weren't hungry, or all kinds of things that could have purpose.
Yeah. And again, this is like a great jumping off point. Yeah. Even if they veered off the tutorial after 10 minutes, you'd still have like those basic fundamental building blocks to Scratch. Yeah. And so I really love Imagine a World, and I can't wait to see it. It's relatively new. Yeah. Yeah. So we can't talk about Imagine a World the whole time.
Yeah, we're going to do that.
Even though we love it.
And that's our little deep dive into that one. I think we won't go as deep into the other two, but we will still...
Without further ado.
Next up, what's that? It's Code Cartoon.
So I recognize this character, I think.
Oh, could that be from Cartoon Network's Craig of the Creek?
Yes. So this one,
Jessica.
If you have any
she's Jessica.
Cartoon Network fans, or just fans of awesome things, we collaborated with Cartoon Network to run this next tutorial, which is, how would you describe it?
It is also designed to be pretty beginner friendly, with like blocks that, let's start a new project.
Let's start a new project.
With blocks that, you can combine together in a lot of, a lot of like, easy to put together blocks. But the sort of the theme of this one, actually, get it in the new.
Let's go here.
Yeah, there you go. But with the theme of this one being sort of animating a cartoon character. Yeah. And so the video for this one also gives a little like, and we could probably play the.
Also, something important. So when you select Code a Cartoon, it brings up a new tab.
Oh yeah, that's something important to notice.
Yeah. So let's run that again. So if you're in a blank project and you selected Code a Cartoon, you'll notice it creates a new tab, and then in that tab, it opens up the starter project that has these characters.
Because for this one, we wanted like the Craig of the Creek characters to be there for you already to code if you wanted to do them.
Okay. Yeah.
So it gets a little bit of inspiration with the different types of ways you could animate a character. And it could be one of these Craig of the Creek characters. Could also just be a character from scratch or one they draw. And it walks through the first few things you can do, and then after the video, and it's got lots of sort of code stacks that you can build to animate the different characters. Got them growing and shrinking, and I think one of them jumps, and
it's great. It's kind of like bringing your cast of characters to life, kind of giving them superpowers, giving them personalities, making them do things. It's really great for kind of like the win sprite click kind of interactions.
Yeah.
Again,
got a whole bunch of characters and you click on them and they can do different things. And
a lot of pretty simple, again very like kind of simple but powerful scripts. Yeah. I'm also really excited about this one. One thing to note, which is important at the end, it's kind of like this invitation to sort of add your own characters to sort of make sure that it's not just Cartoon Network, but sort of bringing in your own drawings or whatever characters you think should be in your project.
Yeah. So that one, I would say that one and Imagine a World are both. That's also a pretty designed to be pretty beginner friendly.
I think so. Again, a lot of those short but powerful scripts. So let's talk about, last but certainly not least, Talking Tales. Okay, so Talking Tales. It's a cool title.
Oh, yeah.
So tell me more about Talking Tales.
So Talking Tales is a little bit more, probably for perhaps a better level for someone who's a bit more comfortable with Scratch. Yep. Or maybe has done a few tutorials already. It uses the text-to-speech extension we have to Scratch, which lets you, is down in our extensions button in the bottom left corner of the editor.
So maybe before we jump into sort of looking at the tutorial, it's important to note, this is using an extension. And for folks that aren't familiar with extensions allow you to connect to software extensions, like translation, voice synthesis.
Stuff where you don't need to have any additional equipment for it to work. But you just have the computer that you have running Scratch on.
Also hardware extensions, So like microbits and things like that. So if you wanted to add an extension, what you do is you go to the lower left here.
And that little square button.
I'll zoom in. Okay, and you'll see the list of extensions here. This one's going to use text-to-speech. And
as you can see, that adds some new blocks.
You'll zoom in. Can we zoom in on the blocks? Oh, come on, computer. Well, I'll pull in a block. So
there you go.
Speak hello. We're not fancy enough to have this work when we click it so you can hear. So it'll say hello. If you were in this room with us,
you would hear it. It's like a robot voice. It's like hello.
So Zoe, do you want to do it? Ready?
Hello.
So that's the idea. And then you can set the tone of the voice. Altos a bit higher. Squeak is really, really high. Giant's a bit lower. So anyways, So that's the kind of the basic of sort of Scratch extensions, text-to-speech. So sorry.
And so this tutorial is sort of about using those text-to-speech blocks where you can make characters talk aloud to take your characters on an adventure where you sort of go to different backdrops and they say different things in the different places.
And so it's using text-to-speech in, I think, a really unique way, which is, and also event blocks. So as Zoe mentioned, a lot of the scripts are triggered when you click a sprite and move to the next backdrop.
So we have this when backdrop switches to block in Scratch. So it uses a lot of like when backdrop switches to underwater, that as an example, the dinosaur could like move around as if it was swimming.
And so if we go back to the video, actually, there's a beautiful example of this. So we watch in the video here, the first thing is we're in the city, and then the ghost is clicked, she's clicked, and then it goes to space. And so that's what you're doing. You're kind of stepping through these different scenes with your two characters, or more than one character, more than two characters. And that's triggering these things that are said and done.
And I think that's what sort of was making us think of this as something for people who are a little bit more comfortable with Scratch, is that sort of it's getting into, okay, I want to have these backdrops and have these things happen, sort of the event triggering and all that stuff.
So like when the backdrop is switched to Jurassic, which is this backdrop, the dinosaur says, "There's no place like home." When it's switched to Spotlight, you see the dinosaur will say, "Check out these moves," and then dance. So
that dino was so cute.
I'm obviously a bit more familiar with Scratch, and I found this to be like so generative and fun, because it's kind of like you never know what's gonna happen next, and you can just create mini stories, like a mini dance scene with a dinosaur, a mini like shopping spree with a dinosaur. I don't know, and it really just it's fun to like share out too. Like
it's really fun
to have your friends.
The projects we were making as we were like designing it and making the samples, we were just like laughing a lot.
And to be honest, like when backdrop switches as like a hat event block is like underused. It's like really a super like awesome way to like control your project. Okay. So I think we've been talking a lot. So we look forward. Please do send us your questions. Hour of Code questions. So we've talked again about the 3 new activities which you can access on the homepage of Scratch. Is that all that can be done for Hour of Code?
Why no, it's not. There are also more Scratch resources.
But wait, there's more. Do we have a sign for that?
You bet we do.
So, of course, we've created 3 new activities for Hour of Code. And if you go on the Hour of Code website, code.org, or hourofcode.com. I don't know the exact.
But you know what I bet does?
Google.
The document.
The document. Yes, the Bitly document has it in there. Yeah. You'll find these 3 activities and some ones from previous years. However, Hour of Code, you should do whatever you want. And we have plenty of other activities that would be perfectly suited for your Hour of Code experience. Yeah. So
we take a little trip to the ideas page.
The ideas page. So let's go back.
Woo.
Fancy woo. Fantagraphics. So one of the most powerful buttons on the Scratch website is the ideas button here in the nav bar. So we'll go to the ideas page. And if we scroll down the ideas page, we'll see a little mosaic here of a number of different activities. This one looks familiar. Oh. But we have on this page 9 different activities to choose from. I would say animate a name, make a chase game, and imagine a world. These are like especially good for beginners. These 3 are especially good.
Yeah, I think we like roughly have the sort of the top row is especially good for beginners, kind of.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah. There's more than meets the eye though. So especially for folks that are looking for some more support materials for running an activity with Scratch. Yeah. If you click an activity, so for instance, we'll click animate a name. Yeah. It's going to pop up this modal. I'll zoom in. And in this, you'll see a number of resources. You'll three different resources. This blue button is going to take you to the editor, and it's going to open the tutorial. Yeah. And that's kind of exactly what we were doing the first 3 examples. Yeah. So that's the in-editor tutorial. Yeah. The coding cards, oh my God. So the coding cards, you want to explain these?
Yeah, I love the coding cards so much. The coding cards are, they're sort of like a print version of what the tutorial is, where they have lots of sort of code blocks, steps you can go through. So, it'll, on the front of each card, it'll sort of, if you scroll up just a tiny bit,
sorry.
That A. So it'll show you the this is called color clicker, and so you click a letter to make it change color, and then on the back of that card, if you just scroll down, it shows you the code to do it, which is just changing the color effect. So anyway, they've got lots of activities on lots of different themes, creating a story, making a virtual pet, making a Pong game.
Yeah. It's great to have these available. They're a bit like more verbose. There's like kind of more explanatory things on like where things are. Sorry to shake. I would highly recommend printing out some copies. I love them.
It's sometimes nice to like have something physical to be going by.
Yeah. Okay, so that was one really awesome resource.
One of the links that was there
that we have. Let's go back. Okay, so
because then we also have
here's this other one. It's called an Educator Guide, and the Educator Guide is going to help support you in running in this case, a 1-hour workshop. Yep. Of course, it's not at all prescriptive that says it has to be 1 hour. Mm-hmm. I think this is just a framework that helps support you in thinking about how it is you might chunk however much time you have. And so right up top, we kind of give the suggestion again. We talked about this earlier, the Imagine, Create, Share sort of framework, which is spend the first 10 minutes or what I think would be like maybe 10% of the time gathering to come up with ideas around the theme. And then spend the bulk of the time creating, and then spend time at the end, really important, sharing and reflecting. Yeah. And so even if this was just the extent of the guide, I think that's a good reminder. But there's more, which is this is sort of a guide that helps support you in each of those steps. So you have how to prepare, and then this is the Imagine section. So for instance, in the Imagine section, you might have a warm activity where everyone says their name, and then everyone in the group acts out the shape of the first letter of their name. You might also show the video, which shows some really kind of inspiring examples. For creating, there's some great facilitation tips here. And for sharing, there's great tips on sharing, like questions you might ask, like what did you like best? What was the hardest part? If you had more time, what would you add change? And so this is like a really, really great resource to have to look at for yourself. And again, try to make it fit for however much time you have. But I really do think the Imagine, Create, Share is a framework that's really worth sort of investigating, and I think you do get like really great results from it.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So so if we zoom back out and we look at this again, so there's right now 9 activities that have like this complete set of educator guide cards and a tutorial. And so Imagine the World is the only one of the 3 this year that has that complete set. But again, think about how it is. You can come up with your own icebreaker. And I think the share section, you can look at any educator guide and match that to whatever it is you're doing.
Totally. And it's so inspiring to see how educators will remix these things and like change them and make them fit their own context. And
yeah.
Shall we talk about the logistics?
Sure, that's probably important, right? There's logistics. So some logistics to think about is like should students have accounts? Why would a student want an account on Scratch?
If you want to work online and save the work online, they'll need to have an account.
They'll need to have accounts. That is an important thing, and I think related to that is you probably want an easy way to generate these accounts. Yeah. And so what we suggest doing, and there's a link in this guide for educator accounts. So we can probably just actually we can show you where it is you can get those.
Yeah.
So an educator account is going to let you easily create a number of Scratch accounts associated with your account.
Side note, there is so much good stuff in the Scratch footer. So right here, there's a link for educators down there in the footer. A lot of good stuff.
Yep, so we'll click that. Yep. Yeah, it does feel kind of sad to like blow through all this content, but
there's also a lot of good stuff above this, but this one's probably the most relevant.
So you can request a teacher account in 24 to 48 hours. We'll approve it, and there's a great FAQ here, frequently asked questions, that helps walk you through the features of a educator account. And I think probably like maybe most importantly to share today is that you can upload a CSV that has usernames and passwords for your class. You can also quickly manually create accounts. It's like, I think they're nice to have. Yeah. It also allows you to more like easily share to studios. But again, check out the FAQ. Definitely suggest doing that. So there's also another link in the footer. Let's talk about this. Let's come back to us. So we just talked about being online. Yeah. We understand sometimes the internet goes out. There's a giant snowstorm happening outside. Yeah, who knows if we'll have internet? The internet can drop out of here at any moment. There's a huge snowstorm coming through Boston.
We have
just in case, as a contingency plan, it might be nice to have the offline editor. Yeah. Also, some schools would prefer to be offline. And so we got you covered. Let's show you how we have you covered. So we will go back to our browser. Where can they find?
So right down here under support, you've got this download button.
Download, okay.
And here you can select your OS. We have just within the last month released Scratch for Chrome OS and Android. So Scratch works on Chromebooks now as its own app, which means you can connect to extensions. Yeah. Super exciting. Anyway, so you select your OS, and then it's got all the stuff you need for downloading Scratch offline.
Yeah, and again, it's on Chromebooks now. Like you download it on Chromebooks, and it's like an app, and you can connect to extensions. Yeah, super cool. This is also Scratch 3 is like a kind of a single download thing. You don't need to download Adobe Air or anything like that. It's super simple. Couldn't hurt to have it on a flash drive just in case, or installed on Chromebooks or your students' laptops. Yeah. So you got coverage there. Also important, the tutorials are also on. Yes. The tutorials are on the offline editor. Yeah. So you don't have to worry about them not being accessible. Yeah. Yeah. Is there anything else we should?
I think are we ready to open it up for questions and sharing?
The chat has been going like crazy right now. So we have a number of questions. Awesome. I think we also have LLK Lifelong Kindergarten Scratch teamer Lily here, who is off screen. I don't know if we can. Who has been helping out in the chat. We also have Rupal and Natalie in the other room, and KO Kristen, who have been helping out with the chat. So for this half hour, the last half hour of the session, we want to exclusively focus on what questions you might have about Hour of Code and Scratch resources. And also, we want to highlight a few a few stories of how other educators are going to be using Hour of Code this year, how they're going to be using Stripe's Hour of Code. Are there any questions, Lily, that you think we should try to address?
Well, I mean, this is one that comes up a lot, that has been coming up in conversations, is how do I support students who are at different challenge levels during Hour of Code?
Yeah, that's a good question.
A really good one.
How would you say that? What do you think?
I would say to start, but also definitely want to open it up to the chat to answer it. Oh,
yes. Duh. Okay, so here's what we wanted to do. We are not the sage on the stage. We don't have all the answers. And in fact, we would like to hear from the entire chat. This would kind of be like a hybrid Twitter chat, YouTube thing. Yes. That is a fantastic question. So if you also have suggestions, we could use the entire brain trust of who is here right now to help support that. So the question is, how do you support folks at different challenge levels?
Yeah. Okay. As you put your answers in the chat, I think that we try to design our tutorials to be easy to do them in, kind of mix them up in any order. So and like you could take one and then go to two other ones. Like they're sort of all compatible. So you could start with Imagine a World, and maybe one kid spends the whole time on Imagine a World. But if you really reinforce to other learners, like you could do, you sort of, they say, oh, I'm done with this one. You could say, oh, well, do you want to make it talk? And then you can do the talking tales or create animations that talk, which also uses the same text-to-speech extension as that. Yeah. So you could sort of like, because you can then combine whatever you would do in the talking tales one could be combined with an Imagine a World one. So I think that, I think that's a strategy that I have when we do workshops, is to try to encourage that like the tutorials can kind of be like puzzle pieces that can go in any order.
Yeah. The tutorials are good jumping off points, and there's certainly tutorials that have concepts that are a bit more challenging.
Yeah.
So I would say that's one way to address it. If you have the means to have a hardware extension like a microbit or a WeDo kit, I think connecting any of these activities with a connection to a physical world device is a way to sort of pique a lot of sort of interest of folks that maybe want to kind of get off of the screen a little bit and take their project in a direction and bring it into the physical world. I found a lot of success in that. And then I often mention the online community because I think it's a wonderful space filled with a lot of inspirational projects that, of course, you can see inside. And so I would not shy away from inviting folks to sort of check out the online community and think about remixing or building off of another project. Again, and if you're not familiar with the online community, again, you can play a project and you can see inside, and then if you're logged in, you can remix and build on that. So I do think there's ways in which you can sort of pique kids' interest by showing them inspirational projects in the online community and have them build off of something that is maybe a bit more challenging.
And folks in the chat are mentioning that like the coding cards have helped with working with learners at different levels. Letting folks choose their own coding card set to work through and take it in their own direction.
One thing also that I should note is it is funny because sometimes one way to frame that question is like the complexity of the code becomes maybe like uninteresting, or it becomes like too simple. And like, okay, I'm just like, it's like I want to do something more complex, and it's like a very code specific. It's a very code specific like want, but also like thinking about the audio and the artwork. There's so many like wonderful artwork tutorials in the online community. If you search like vector art tutorials, if you search like so searching for tutorials in the online community, whether that's art or like sound, is a great thing. But also, if someone wants to like add gravity or add a high score leaderboard, to be honest, like if you type in high score tutorial on the Scratch website, there's going to be hundreds of tutorials that can help. So the search bar is really an important thing to get at what questions.
And like getting that motivation where like there's making a slideshow project that maybe the code is just switching to the next slide. If you're really motivated to make that slideshow.
Yeah.
At any stage of challenge, that can be really fun. So.
That was a really good question.
Yeah, it was a really good question.
Thank you folks in the chat for chiming in as well.
Oh.
So what question do we have next for us in the chat?
So Coach Newton was asking, he said that he works with various 6th grade teachers and they have their students host younger classrooms. And he asked what tutorial you'd recommend as a co-coding hour of code.
God, these are such good questions. Such a good question. Well, the live chat, please.
Yeah, live chat.
While we ruminate.
I have one.
You have one, great.
Create a story could be a cool one because you could sort of brainstorm a story together, maybe like before you really with a pencil and paper or just talking, and then with the help of the older kids, start making the story. That could be fun.
Yeah, there's probably some games too. So let me jump back to our editor here. Let's make a new project. There's a few games where I can see where you might want to make a 2-player game.
Ooh, yeah.
And that would be fun. So like for instance, chase game. Chase game. The idea behind the chase game. Sorry, I'm gonna get super specific into an example. I don't know if this is exactly what you should do, but for instance, chase game is you have a character that chases an object, and you are sort of shown in this tutorial to move a character with right arrow keys and left arrow keys. But of course, you could add a second character, and instead of having the right arrow go right, you could have the W key, and you could have the Q key go left. And so you could have, instead of just one character, you could have two characters, either competitively or collaboratively playing a game like this. And it would only kind of just take a little bit of hacking of this idea. Because again, this is kind of a single player, one sprite chases a sprite. But I could totally see kind of some cool stuff of having both kids on the keyboard controlling characters.
Totally.
That could be cool.
That'd be really cool. Pong game is totally do the same thing.
Pong game's a thing.
The front page of the coding cards of Pong game actually show, and even the beginning of the tutorial, show just a hint that you could easily make it a 2-player. Anyway. So
I've had success with animated name actually, because it doesn't have to be a name.
Yeah.
It could be something. It could be something like shared interest or something, or it could be something silly, because it's a very beginner activity. It's a younger audience.
Yeah.
But actually, I don't know. I think a lot of these work. Like telling a story, it's fun to come up with a story together.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Yeah.
And I just talked to a educator at ISTE this year who had an awesome project where 3rd graders and 8th graders would make a monster creature together. That the 3rd graders would decide what the head would be and the body and the arms, and then the 8th graders would code it in Scratch and then bring back to the 3rd graders their creation. So there's also tons of cool stuff.
Yeah, that was a good question. Thanks, Christian.
Yeah, thank you so much.
So someone was asking about other Hour of Code webinars, but they were asking specifically about if there'd be opportunities to talk about robotics, but in general, where there be other opportunities to connect about Hour of Code with Scratch.
So we don't have any robot. Oh, should we switch it back to us?
Yes, we should switch back to us. Oh, geez.
We don't have a robotics webinar or a robotics like Lego robotics or anything HOC activities this year. We do though on the extension pages for Lego so our extensions we have if you go to Scratch, for instance, mit.edu/wedo.
Let's zoom in on this. Oh, we can't zoom in.
Actually,
it's scratch.mit.edu/ in this case wedo.
Yeah. And so here it's got a little video that actually we made.
Yeah, we made this.
That shows a bunch of sort of projects you could do with WeDo, and then shows the basics. That face might be familiar. Shows some starter projects to get started and stuff. So not HOC specific for this year, but there is stuff. And the same thing if you instead of in the URL bar, instead of WeDo you did EV3 or Boost, I'm pretty sure they have the same one.
Yeah, and so again, this is like the inspiration you can see here. So these starter projects, we have a set of 3, and each of the starter projects will kind of highlight one kind of feature of the robotics kit or of whatever hardware device.
Yeah.
So like play basketball, you're using the distance sensor. For music, you're using the buttons on the EV3, and for space tacos,
you're like tilting it.
You're using
or like turning
the motor direction.
Yeah.
To like guide your thing, and so it kind of like again introduces in a very fun, generative way different parts of that, and so the landing page, it's like /EV3 and /redo. I do wish, and I'm not sure that this is the case, there's an easier way to get to the landing pages.
Yeah, it's a shame that right now it's sort of, you have to just know they're there. There is a link to them from the extensions library. If you back at this button, this square button in the bottom left, any hardware extension, if you click on it to add it, so this is Lego Boost,
you can hit help.
You can hit help, but gosh, it would be great if that were more findable.
So that's a good question.
And then I think in terms of more webinars, this is the only HOC specific webinar.
Are people liking it? I mean, we should probably do more webinars.
We should do more webinars.
It's fun. Yeah. I don't know. It's probably not between now and
it would now and hour code
week,
probably not. But this will also be available as a video on demand later at this same link.
Yeah.
And we want to do more webinars in the future.
Yeah. So. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Waiting for other questions, but in the meantime, I wondered if maybe we could talk about languages in Scratch, because this comes up a lot.
Yeah. Languages in Scratch.
Yeah,
that's a good question.
So actually, I think not everyone may know this, but you can change Scratch is translated into over 60 languages, and if you click on that globe icon up in the top, right there, then and then the menu's small.
The menu's so small.
But you can change the language, and all of the blocks will change. Which is pretty great. The tutorials, the videos have captions which are translated into a lot of languages, and I think that most of the tutorials are translated into at least 30 languages. Yep. And then after the videos, there are those images that have the different like sort of steps, all of those things all of our tutorials are in Spanish, and so for this hour of code, all of our hour of code activities are fully available in both
Spanish.
English and Spanish.
Okay. Good to know.
And more languages to come in tutorial translation.
Yeah, I think that's kind of fun. So Zoe and I and others on the resources team, we're trying to think through exactly like how it is we can easily create localized translated versions of all of our resources, and it's very labor intensive manual process.
Yeah.
Currently, though, we have a wonderful huge shout out to the translators who are translating Scratch in so many different languages.
It would not be.
Those languages that you just saw, 60 because people love Scratch and want to give back. So
they donate their time and work really hard.
Yeah.
And every time we make a piece of text on the website and then change the wording slightly, they go in and work. The work is immense that they do.
Yeah.
We have a question from Sandra.
Sandra,
if you
great.
only had a 30-minute class.
Oh, jeez, that's a good question.
It's a good question.
That's a good question.
Oh.
I would
should
there's options. This isn't like, oh my gosh, there's not options. It's just, I would like to phone a friend in the chat. We have some Scratch teamers out here that I'm sure have good ideas as well.
Yeah.
What comes to mind for you, Zoe?
I think that animate a name. I think that
so let's go back.
There's that moment where it clicks and you make something do something. That sounded vague, but in animate a name, it's like you click a letter and it changes color. And I think in animate a name, it's so quick. It's such a short, and you could do even animate a word. You could all animate the same word if you've got 30 minutes, or I don't know, it's like 2 blocks, and then you've got something happening. So I think that could be an option.
Yep. I've done workshops that are 30 minutes. My introduction to Scratch, I don't know if I've ever told you this, Zoe. My introduction to Scratch was a 30-minute workshop. And what happened was it was a very basic introduction to we had like a very getting started, like here's Scratch. We actually I'll throw this out there. I'm sorry we haven't mentioned this yet. Yeah. I'm gonna go back. We have a brilliant, I think, getting started video. Which I shouldn't say that because we made it and it's like it's brilliant. But
absolutely brilliant, this Eric and Zoe and Keo and all the others.
The getting started has a 1-minute video that essentially just says like, what is Scratch? How do blocks work? How do you run blocks? How do you trigger the blocks? What are sprites? And it's like in 1 minute, you can like automatically feel like a bit more comfortable about like what it is you might be doing. So again, this is like, oh, you can connect blocks, you can then run them. And then you introduce this idea of there's events. So if you want to start your code, you drag out an event block. And then, we say you can also rearrange the blocks. You can also then toss out the blocks. You can add multiple sprites and code them. And so like in literally a minute, you get like a good kind of bearing of like, okay, what is Scratch? And so I think I can't emphasize enough, just giving the lay of the land is important. Also, I think explaining to folks that it's totally okay to experiment and Scratch is about tinkering.
Yeah.
And if you want to just do a tutorial, animated name's a great one.
Kristen in the chat, one of our dear friends who helps us make all the awesome resources, works on the resources team with us, said that for a 30-minute lesson, she'll also do group coding. So like all together code one project or things, another awesome idea. Yeah.
That could be, that's interesting. Yeah. Also group together, like that 30-minute introduction was I was with someone and it added a lot.
Yeah.
Because you're kind of going through it with someone you can bounce ideas off of. Yeah, and I guess thinking about the Imagine program share, it would still be nice to have like a short Imagine section where you show what is possible with Scratch. And so actually on the homepage of the Scratch website, just the homepage logged out, there's a about Scratch video that is like I think a minute long that shows you different Scratch projects, because that's another important thing. It's like, what the heck is Scratch? Like, why would I want to, like, what is like coding?
Right.
It might
not
that
inspiration and that buy-in kind of.
Yeah, like I can make games, I can make stories, and I can make animations. So like hit them with a little inspiration.
Yeah.
Really
good, but it's a great question.
Yeah.
Really great question, and I think like it very good to remember that like the time constraints people.
I would love to know how it goes too. If you're on Twitter, you should like totally make sure to tweet that at Scratch. Would be super interested to see how it goes. Yeah. Okay, we got 12 minutes. I'm sure we've got more questions.
Yeah, I have more questions.
We also have a lot of questions that are about Scratch itself, like what language is it built on, how many users it have, and so I'm wondering both like maybe this isn't the time for it, but are there places people can find out more about Scratch?
Yeah. There is the Scratch FAQ. Which has answers to some of those. There's also on the About Scratch page that Eric mentioned, I think it has some stats about users and stuff.
Yeah.
I know.
So we can answer quickly just some of these. Yeah, so specifically there's the statistics page where you can see how many people you get via the footer. And then for the technical questions, if there's a specific question, you could always use Contact Us. So you can send a message. Where is Contact Us? Contact Us down here in the footer. Contact us. Have you ask the question? If you really want to like dig into like the code that Scratch was built on, it's all open sourced. So if you Google Scratch GitHub, I'm sure you can find a repository that will have a bunch of documentation and all the stuff that you want. So I would point you there.
Yeah.
There's one thing about and generally speaking about Scratch is it's all open source.
Yeah.
Minus the website. I mean, the website, there's private things on the website. That's clearly not open source. But the editor is open source.
Yeah. Something matters to us a lot.
Yeah, and like Scratch 3 was built on like pull requests and like code from other, not only within the Scratch team, but like contributors. So like.
Yeah. There's a lot of folks on that are Scratch users that contribute to the app, like to it.
Yeah, I see Kathleen mentioning the Scratch Wiki.
Yeah.
Somebody's asking about being able to create code in Scratch with voice and in different languages.
Oh, interesting.
In different languages, like voice.
I mean, that would be super, super cool. And I am going to write that down so we can pass it along.
I was also say, so we had a master student here.
Yeah.
Tina, who was looking at coding for the folks that have like visual impairments, and she was digging into like what a coding platform might be like if you had to use your voice only. And so there's actually a Scratch video update. If you watch the Scratch video updates, which is a video blog series that's on YouTube, I think the most recent episode, Tina co-hosted with me, and she actually talked the last 3 minutes about her work that she was doing around that. But we're always thinking about how to sort of make Scratch more accessible. And I think even in 2020, that's something that like we're really, really focused on. Now Scratch 3 is launched. Yeah.
Great.
Are there any other like resources that we might want to share at this time? I'm wondering if there's.
We covered them all.
So
just
many.
kidding. No, there's so many. So maybe we can plug the Educator page again. So let's go back. Again. We will scoot down to the footer.
To where all this good stuff is.
Who would have thought we spent so much time in the footer? But here we are. The Educator's page. Front and center on the Educator page is a wonderful resource called Scratch and Practice. I would describe Scratch and Practice as, it was a monthly. Every month we would have a new theme that would help you bring Scratch into your practice. So the previous themes we had were getting started with Scratch, connecting to the curriculum, peer learning, projects with a purpose. And then for each of these themes, we'd have content that would help you with this. So for instance, in February, we had getting started with Scratch. We had a workshop. So we talked about a workshop that you might want to lead animated character. Mitch talked kind of a high level of sort of how he views sort of the importance of getting kids started with Scratch, experimenting, exploring, expressing themselves. Natalie dove a bit deeper to talk about sort of exploration and not explanation. And then we had educators just like you kind of sharing thoughts on how to get started with Scratch. And so there's a lot of great themes here to dig into. We're not doing it monthly anymore.
Yeah.
But there's
sort of on a more quarterly.
More quarterly, I guess you could say, yeah. So Scratch in Practice. I believe that's also in the handy dandy link that you see in the title on the webinar.
Yeah.
So that's one that comes to mind.
Yeah, here we've got alternative links to the educator guides, also the creative computing curriculum guide.
Yep.
Which is awesome.
Yep. This is how you might plan sort of coding activities. Introduce Scratch in like really just amazing ways over several weeks. It's free, fantastic guide. That's also good. Yeah. So and there's probably other resources that we're sorry.
Yeah.
I would highly suggest checking out the Educator page.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, we got a couple more minutes. 7 more minutes. Let's go back to this.
This is just a small, more specific one. Other people have been asking about. Do you offer certificates for Hour of Code?
So that's a good question. So you might see some. If you search Hour of Code on Twitter, you'll see #hour, and you see a lot of kids that hold the certificates. Like I completed an hour of code, and so we don't. Scratch does not have those certificates. So that's the kind of sharing that you can see at the end is hopefully just like an exhibition of the projects. So we don't have anything, no badges or any certificates for completing it. But again, hopefully you have time to sort of show off again these projects that hopefully are as meaningful as a certificate. More meaningful.
Yeah.
Yep.
Someone else is asking about like in the future will you be thinking about adding more advanced tutorials?
Whoa, that's a great question.
Yes. So. I think we really want to think about that and like how we can support deeper learning as just some stuff we've been talking about, and like how to really like support all these pathways from like the first getting started tutorial. And I think we were thinking a lot about like what shapes they could take. How can we involve more like starter projects? I think when we ask people about how they got into making bigger and bigger like, Scratch projects, a lot of people talk about starter projects.
Yep. So I think we probably prioritized creating a lot of entry-level generative thematic tutorials to start with.
Yeah. Yep.
Because there's some carryover from 2.0 to 3.0. I keep messing up my hand.
Yeah.
From 2.0 to 3.0, there's some tutorials that came over. Then we added a bunch of new tutorials. Yeah. And now that we've built out, I think, a nice sort of library of tutorials, that's one of the things I'm most excited about in 2020 is thinking about how it is we get into sort of these more advanced concepts. It's not completely obvious how it is you do that. I think there's a lot that we can learn from how it's kind of happening on YouTube. I think there's a learn like from starter projects, from whoever asked that question. If you have suggestions, like you should totally write to us.
I almost wanted to say like if you could put in the chat like where you would want an advanced tutorial to live, or or would you want to find it on YouTube, and like would you want to find it in the tutorials library? We want it to be a Scratch project or Scratch Studio, and or like a thing online, and what kind of stuff you want it to be. Like we will listen to all of that.
Because my suspicion is, my intuition says, it might not take the same form as the tutorials where you step by step starting from a blank slate.
Yeah.
It might be more starter project-y based where you explain the code and the concepts, or it might be a long form. I don't know. Yeah. So it's not that we've forgotten that we don't. It's and not that you're accusing us of doing it, but it's a great question and we want to do more of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Something we're really excited about.
Yeah.
And
someone else was asking about Scratch Day. They were asking about the MIT one, but I wonder if we can share more broadly about what other opportunities there are.
Yeah, so Scratch Days are held all around the world. I think especially in May, but all year round.
Is that also in the footer? I think
that's also in the footer. This is less of an HOC webinar and more of the footer has a lot of...
It's there.
There it is. Yep.
There it is. Scratch Day.
So yeah, it is we have one at MIT.
Yep.
We have where like folks can come all around from all around.
I feel like as long as MIT is here, Scratch Day will be here. I just it's like that's just There's a saying. I don't know.
Yeah, it's gotta be. Yeah.
The sun's gonna rise in the morning and Scratch Day will be at MIT. Like it's like things that are obviously gonna happen.
Yeah.
So yes. So Scratch Day at MIT. I don't actually know the date. I don't know the date.
I don't know the date for this year.
The 9th. May 9th, 2020.
You heard it here first.
That's great. That's wonderful. Yeah.
So I.
Yeah, and if folks are interested in Scratch Day, I think maybe that's the first time you've heard about this Scratch Day thing. It's as exciting as it sounds. It's a global network where people come together to host events to celebrate Scratch and the people who scratch. And
folks will make like Scratch projects. Folks will make like cookies with the Scratch cat on them. Folks will make like Scratch projects in new and weird ways.
And so you can see here, there's a lot. And not so many of these other parallel universes.
Yeah. They're quite devoid.
But in this universe, in this timeline, there's thousands. And then you can click how to host that explains. This is, resources. Talk about resource design. This is great. It steps you through Imagine, planning, and sort of organizing and inviting. It's like everything you need to run a Scratch Day and post your Scratch Day. Yeah. 2 minutes.
2 minutes.
There's been a few questions about like devices. So like is Scratch 2.0 available on like an offline desktop? Is it available on a mobile app? Like what kinds of
I would point you to the downloads page. So that's a good question. On the download page, I'm on the Scratch Day site.
Oh yeah, it took you away.
Took me away. I would point you to the downloads page. That should hopefully give you requirements. It does give requirements of sort of what sort of operating system you need. If you have a specific question and it's not answered in the FAQ or on this page, you can send us a message to contact us. But I think to pop up a level, like it's available on Windows, Mac, and Chrome OS offline. So that's covering a lot of bases. And the one thing to note is with Chrome OS and Android, it's on Android tablets.
Yeah, tablets.
So I learned this, that it's an important distinction. So Android could mean phone and tablets. But this version of Scratch works on Android tablet devices, not Android phones. Yeah. We're at 8:30. We're at 8:30. So I guess we want to thank you all for hanging out, contributing to answering the questions.
Yeah. Thank you so much. This has been so fun.
We've been thinking about this webinar for a long time, so we hope you enjoyed it. And maybe we should host more of these. And we hope you have a wonderful, wonderful hour of code. And again, thank you everyone in the chat who is answering questions, and thanks for all the folks out there helping with the chat. Thank you, Lily.
Keep the ideas coming of tutorials you'd like to see.
Yeah.
We want to make stuff. You all have such good ideas.
Yeah.
We want to make them. So.
Cool. Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess till next time.
Yeah, till next time.
We hope you have a good night, and we'll see you later.
Scratch on.
Scratch on. Bye.